Okay. Well, for those who may not know me, my name is David Homer. I have been in the practice of naturopathic medicine um, in clinical practice for about 25 years, from which I retired 5 years ago. I am still very much involved in the health and wellness arena, and I teach and I write about a concept called whole living. I understand that wholeness is our highest and most authentic state of being. And when we can learn to live from that level of life, we will begin to experience um, nothing short of an extraordinary level of living. And so, my personal definition of wholeness is a complete state of being that expresses a personality shaped by a character refined by truth and molded in love. And so, as we lead into this evening's presentation, I want to ask a couple of questions and I'm hoping that it'll be provoking and soul searching, and that you may even reflect on these questions long after the presentation is over. And so, the first question I'd like to ask is, what if you're not broken, but are always whole? What if there's nothing that's lacking in your life? What if all that you need, all that you possess, all that you need, your creativity, your potential, what if you possess everything that you need to live your ultimate life? I want us to know that the truth is we all are already whole. We lack nothing in our lives. The only thing we lack is the awareness of this. But we are, let's say, living in an ocean of abundance. Life, think of life as an ocean of abundance. And we are a drop of that ocean. But not just simply a drop of the ocean of abundance, we are the actual ocean inside of a drop. We really lack nothing that we need to live our very best life. The second question that I want to ask is, what if the way our body is designed and functions as an inseparable whole is a divine blueprint of how we are meant to live? We have 70 trillion cells, all individual units of life, but living so interconnected, held together by a symphony like a grand orchestra, that every cell in the body that makes up every organ and tissue functions in harmony as one inseparable whole, held together by a wireless network of communication we call consciousness. Our lives, every aspect of our lives, is meant and is designed to function the same way as one inseparable whole. The other question I want to ask is, what if the deficiencies, the imbalances, the dysfunction, and the eventual illness that we develop in our body actually reflects the mindsets, the attitudes, the choices and habits, and the behaviors by which we are living? We live in such a way. There's always a mirror effect between what's going on in our bodies and what's going on in our lives. Almost an identical mirror effect, and this is borne out by science. We unintentionally feed our bodies and treat our bodies and regard our bodies in such a way that we go through life hoping that we would not develop one of the chronic lifestyle diseases that we might have seen our family or friends suffer with. And in a very similar way, we go through life. We go through our day-to-day living, a routine existence that is unintentional. And we go through life trying to figure life out, trying to make life work, hoping that things will work out. Very similar, we're reflecting the same thing. What if enjoying an optimal quality of life and the best standard of living possible was as simple as enhancing the quality and the standard of our wellness? Our wellness reflects the way we live, and the way we live reflects the wellness of our bodies. And so I want us to begin to examine, begin to introspect, begin to look at our lives from the perspective that we are so much more than we have been taught to think of ourselves. And as a result, we end up living in a particular way that mirrors the condition of our body. And the condition of our body really mirrors the condition or the quality of the very lives that we're living. And the truth is, a simple way for us to enjoy the best life is for us to turn inward and to, if we can enhance and build the quality of our health and wellness, we're also going to build our quality of life at the same time. So I want to introduce you to this concept. It's a concept, one of the whole living concepts I call sovereign health. And it's personal authority over one's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Sovereign health talks about the responsibility is yours. We are not victims of chronic lifestyle disease. And in saying that, let me say this. If any of us on the call, you are concerned about lifestyle diseases that may be in your family, or maybe you're dealing with one now and you would like to overcome it, there is no condition that you cannot overcome, and there is none that cannot be prevented. We just have to understand and get a broader and a more true perspective of it. This is about self-mastery, holistic self-mastery. And so with this broader and deeper perspective and understanding about health, that we are the ones that have the power, the authority to reign in our lives across the board, and that is ours. We are not victims that are going through life hoping to make life work and hoping that as we get on in years, we don't suffer from one of these diseases. That's not really how it works. And I hope to be able to communicate that to you. But because of our narrow view, when we say health, our mind automatically goes to how the body feels and how the body functions. And because of this narrow view, we have today a growing global epidemic of chronic lifestyle diseases. And it's just interesting to me that we call them, they're referred to as lifestyle diseases, but yet in the mainstream of medicine and healthcare, we don't really approach the way we live. We just approach it externally as though we are actually just victims of it. And we are taught to think of disease in such a way that we actually become powerless to it. Now, if you look at some of these statistics that come from the World Health Organization, these are very staggering statistics. And they project on their website that in the coming decade, it's going to get worse. There is nothing that takes human life on this planet more than chronic lifestyle disease. And the way how we approach it, with an increase in pharmaceutical drugs and the way our treatments work, they are creating even further problems for us. Today, we are seeing mental health disorders at a level that we have never seen before. So it's moving from just physical illnesses, and now mental disorders are coming more and more to the forefront. And together, it is creating a quality of life that's affecting every government on the planet. Hence, the World Health Organization calls it the global burden of disease. This is what robs not just it's crippling economies, but it's robbing us of the quality of life that we all deserve and that we all desire. And whatever it is we may be pursuing in our life, whatever we may prioritize, whether it be our families, whether it be finances, whether it be our businesses, whether it be personal growth and well-being, if a chronic lifestyle disease comes into the picture, all of a sudden everything takes a back seat. And so it is important that we understand how this works, because the majority of us will spend the last 2 or 3 decades of our lives nursing one of these conditions and likely to think it is just a normal part of aging. I want to dispel that. It is a common thing in society, but it's not normal. It's only common because of how we have been taught to think about disease. And so disease, which is we're focusing on how to deal with what develops in the body, but chronic disease is not the problem. It is just an expression of a lifestyle that is shaped by our state of being. I call this the victim paradigm. You see, we see disease as a threat, not as a signal. If we understand that our wellness, whatever level it may be, it mirrors how we are living. And how we are living is reflected in our bodies. And so when things arise in our bodies, when symptoms begin to show up in our bodies, it's not a threat that we have to wage war against. It is a signal that tells us that we are out of alignment in how we are navigating, how we are engaging with life. That's really the correct perspective that we should have. And we see ourselves as being powerless to illness because we have been taught that we have to take something. It takes something external to who we are to be able to bring our bodies back in order, and which we have seen that has not been as effective. While it may save our lives, we continue to live on medication, controlling and managing our chronic lifestyle diseases, which gradually spirals down and robs us of our quality of life. You see, we see healing as something that has to be activated, something to be stimulated, something to be induced. We have to make healing happen in our bodies. And that's because we don't understand who we are. We don't understand what we possess. We don't understand that we are already whole. We're just not aware of it. And so, for us to get a handle on this, we need to redefine health. We need to define health in its true sense and its true essence. And it's interesting that the World Health Organization has an almost perfect definition of what health is, yet it's not used in the practical approach in what they call healthcare. So let's look at defining true health. The World Health Organization says that health is a complete state of physical, mental, spiritual, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. I inserted the word spiritual because it's not complete without that. But what I want to highlight here is that we are rising above the old mindset that says, if I don't feel sick, the absence of it, I am healthy. That is far from true. It is not what it's not, it is what is. And it is a state that is complete physically, mentally, socially, spiritually, emotionally. It is the entirety of our being. And the way we live is exactly, the body truly is a divine blueprint for the way we're supposed to live. And every aspect of our life is designed to function in the same interconnected harmony as the body does. That is how we are actually designed. And so, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and socially, when every aspect of our life is interconnected and functioning in a harmonious union, that is truly the state we call health. And so when we say state of being, we're talking about how we are, how we live, how we engage, how we are based on who we are. Because who we see ourselves to be, our sense of self, our sense of identity, will determine that state of being. And so our life is our health. And there's no separation in that. When we say health, we're talking about our whole life. When we talk about life, it encompasses everything that makes up health. And so there are two sides or two forms of one thing. And so we need to be the authority over our health, which is the authority over our life and our well-being. because every area of our life stands on this concept, this idea that we call health. Health is not just how our body feels and functions. And if we don't move beyond that concept and that understanding, we are likely to walk right into a sub-quality standard of life and living, develop disease, and be very comfortable to suffer with it, thinking it is normal. The true health is the full expression of our whole life, rooted in a clear awareness of how we see ourselves. I mean, every aspect of our lives depends on this, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, but our relationships and our interaction with life in terms of our financial empowerment. We live in a material world and we live in a social system that is completely upheld by economic structures. And to the degree that we learn to define health as our whole life, when that happens, we will also see the influence that it will have in living not just a healthy, but a prosperous life on all levels. Again, it comes back to the understanding that we don't lack anything. We are already whole, we are already equipped, we already possess all that we need, and all that we are capable of is already inherent to us. We just need to become aware of it. And that's a process. But I want us to understand that health, which is our whole life, and every level of it is designed to function in harmony and union. And there's a way of how we can do that. But it is completely rooted in the awareness of who we see or how we see ourselves, our sense of self, our sense of identity, and understanding all the rudiments of that. So when we speak about sovereign health, it begins when we stop outsourcing our power to an external structure of things that has not been serving us well. We have to take responsibility. We have to understand who we are and what we possess. And when we do, we will understand how we can walk through life with a level of quality of living that we dream of, but we are very capable of experiencing. And in sessions to come, I hope to be able to even talk more about those things. I want to launch out into it by this quotation that was made by Thomas Edison back in the 1800s. Very insightful quote that he said is that the doctor of the future will give no medicine. That's interesting. But will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. Well, in the world that we live in today, we cannot imagine dealing with disease without medicine. It's almost an unheard of thing. You cannot even conceptualize being diagnosed and not looking for a medicine. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we don't do that, but I'm saying that I'm talking about a mindset, a conditioning that we have been given of a victimhood mindset, that we are just victims of disease when we're not. What develops in the body 100% reflects the way we are engaging in our lives. All the deficiencies and the imbalances that lead to dysfunction, and so they all will mirror our thought patterns, our emotional responses, our attitudes, our habits, our behaviors, how we engage life. Our physical well-being will always mirror how we engage. And what happens to our bodies is not, it's not your body crying out for something against it. It is giving us a sign, a signal. It's telling us, it's showing us, it's pointing the way of where we need to step back and take. But now that we are becoming more aware of this, perhaps we will begin. And when we start to look at illnesses in this new light, you'll see how it will take us into a way of living and being that actually helps us to overcome the illness. So the highlight here is, can we actually be in a time where we can overcome illness without medicine? And the answer is yes, but we would have to understand what causes disease. What And once we understand the cause, we can know how to prevent it. And so that's what we're going to look at, understanding that it is possible to be able to overcome illness without medicine. And here's how. Because healing is inherent to the human design. You see, healing is the divine flow of life that's woven in to the fabric of human design. When that flow comes into full alignment with divine order, spontaneous healing occurs. You see, healing is built in to our very makeup. We don't need to do anything to activate it, to stimulate it. It is the constant flow of life. It is what makes our hair grow when we cut it. It's what makes our cells keep multiplying. Right now, every 60 seconds that pass, millions of cells are expiring and millions of cells are being rebirthed. This constant flow of life is always happening. Our body completely remakes itself every 7 years. There is no cell or atom in your body that's the same 7 years ago. It's always being renewed, it's always being regenerated. There's this flow of life that when you get a cut, it will just start this very intricate process and it will mend itself. You break a bone, the doctors can only set it. It will begin to knit itself back together. There is no limit to what this will heal. Spontaneous healing, and for those who don't know, look it up. And a good book that I recommend to people is a book called Cured by Dr. Jeffrey Ridiger. But spontaneous healing is well documented across the spectrum of conventional medicine. Many papers of literature there that validates. And what spontaneous healing is people who are diagnosed with terminal conditions and people who have incurable conditions that completely recover without the use of medical treatments or any other type of structured therapies or treatments. How does that happen? How is it possible that we have the capacity that we are able to and we're talking about people with stage 4 cancer of which there's nothing that medicine can do. We're talking about people that have tumors in their brains. We're talking about people who have who eyesight has deteriorated to a point of blindness and everything comes back and is restored and the conditions disappear. Now, I'm just going to encourage you that if you're not familiar with this, this is a very reality in medicine. It's a step beyond what we call the placebo effect, where that's well documented as well. You can go online, you can go to the National Library of Medicine, and you can see all the documents that they have about how real the placebo effect is, even though we treat it as a negative, that, oh, it's all in your mind. Indeed, it is in our mind, but it's just showing the faculties and the capacity that we have to be able to heal and repair from anything. If there's a condition in our bodies, if there is something that's not working well, if there's something that has developed that we need to have it changed, and our body is not fixing it, it's just that flow of divine life that built our bodies, runs our systems, and is continuously flowing, something is blocking it. That's all there is. And spontaneous healing is when people discover their sense of identity of who they really are and discover there's so much more to them that they come to a place where those blockages are removed and the flow is released and the body just will naturally do what it's designed to do. For those of you who may be familiar with biblical scriptures, even that is even seen in there because there's a lot of talk about Jesus who healed the sick and so on. And if you look at his major healings, all the accounts of that, he would always say of the biggest of the healings that he did is, your faith has made you whole, your faith has made you well, your faith. In other words, he's pointing, he never pointed to himself and say, it is my power, it is the power of God. He said, your faith. In other words, the catalyst is in you. The catalyst is inherent. Right now, if there's anything that's going on in a person's body right now, I'm saying this to you, not just from knowledge intellectually, but experience. If you can believe, it's just as simple as that. If you believe it, it would happen. Not someday, sometime, immediately. That's the truth. Now, these are not fables. These are not just historical events. These are not stories. This is a reality of the human design. It's just that for us to be able to believe against what we've been conditioned to think, against what we actually believe is not possible, that's what has to be dismantled. See, to say to someone, if I'm saying to you, can you believe? Can you believe that you can actually just believe it and watch it just go? We don't really know how to do that. We don't really have much control even over our minds because of how we've been conditioned. And this is part of where we need to step back and really take a look and understand who we are, because our minds, the very thing that governs how we experience and navigate life, if it's one thing that we should have governance over and have more of a harness on, that is our minds. And so that is the dynamics of our internal well-being that can either make us or break us. Let me say this to us, ladies and gentlemen. All of our thoughts, all of our emotions that we go through, our cells are metabolizing the frequencies of every thought and emotion. The metabolism of every cell is either supported or disrupted by our very thoughts and emotions. And that is all borne out in quantum biology and epigenetics. It all validates how all that's going, that's why you cannot separate who we are and how we function as one inseparable whole. But because healing is inherent, this is, see, I say our sovereignty, that authority and power that we have, that is our prescription, and alignment is our medicine. Just being aligned in the wholeness of our being. Is that possible? Absolutely, it's possible. And so understanding that health, true health, is a state of being that encompasses all dimensions of our life, and that we are three-dimensional beings. Body, soul, spirit is how we perceive it, but the correct perception is spirit, soul, body. We are not a body that have a spirit. We are a spirit in our body. Our true essence of being is spiritual. We won't get into that, but I just want us to get from this how it sets us up for illness, how it sets us, how disease comes in to the whole picture. Before we can do anything, we must be. We can't do unless we first are. And being is our essential nature, and that is spiritual. We are spiritual beings. And when the life of spirit filters through the soul via consciousness, and it configures our heart and mind with its qualities, which is peace, joy, coherence, that brings harmony and coherence in our soul, and it flows through via the central nervous system into the body. Healing is nothing more than the flow of life from spirit freely flowing all the way through to the body. See, the soul, this is where we have to pay attention, because this is where our sense of identity, our self-awareness, our sense of who we are, how we engage life, how we navigate life, how we actually experience life. You're thinking, you're listening to me, you're transposing what I'm saying into your opinions, your thoughts, agreements, disagreements, your judgments, etc. All that's happening right here. It's not happening in spirit, it's not happening in body, it's happening right here in your soul, your mind, your heart, your thoughts, your emotions. And this is what defines how we are going to engage life and how it's going to reflect. Now, if our thoughts and our emotions are configured by qualities that are contrary to the qualities of our spiritual nature, it creates a tension right here in the soul. It's like a veil, And that veil becomes like a cloud that will block the light of the sun. So let's say the light of spirit is shining through, but now there's a veil here and it casts a shadow here in the body. That is what disease is. Disease is nothing more the dysfunction that begins to develop right in our bodies because there's a shadow that has been cast, because a blockage, a veil, a resistance has been developed here, and there's not a free flow of the very thing that built the body, runs the body, and continues to configure everything. That flow of life is being resisted. How does that happen? And so, because of the world we're born into, and it happens from oftentimes even from within the womb, but we come into this world and we are taught to look at life, to believe life in a particular way, to see life in a particular way, to see ourselves in a particular way. We're conditioned, we're socially conditioned that this flow is actually inverted, rather from inside out to outside in. And what we don't understand is that this also is what makes life a struggle. Rather than life working for us, we feel that life often works against us. But life never, ever works against us, even though it may appear to be that way. Life only flows one way, and that's always towards goodness, always towards growth, always towards our best. We may not experience it that way, and that's because we're paddling upstream. We're going against the flow. But without existential awareness of our divine identity, which is the case, that's really the key right here. When we are not aware of our true essence of being, it becomes replaced by a false egocentric identity, which is what is conditioned by the world. And that switches from being to doing. And so life is driven by performance, achievements, and seeking external validation to satisfy our sense of self. Why? Because we don't quite, and there's a conflict that goes on with us because we are inherently designed to be one way, but we have learned to live from a contrary place. We have adopted an identity that is contrary to our true essence, and it creates a very tension right here in our soul. And so our thoughts and emotions, the very things that's determining and defining our personality, our attitudes, etc., are being defined from external and not internal. And this creates this body-spirit conflict. I call it spiritual amnesia. So today we acknowledge that we are spiritual beings. We acknowledge that there's a real dimension to our lives called spirit. And when I say spirit, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not talking about some mystical, abstract concept. I'm talking about a very real, dynamic part of our makeup that gives life and animation to this body and allows us to be able to tap into a dimension of reality that is beyond what our physical senses can tap into, that helps us to be able to govern over and reign in life, a very real aspect of our being. But in essence, when our desire to satisfy our sense of self-worth, that is something that's built into us. Why? Because we are already whole, we are already complete. That's our true essence of being. But because we're not aware of it, we are seeking it outside. And that's where doing becomes what drives our life rather than being. Doing that comes out of being is far more effective, far more effortless, and far more efficient. But when doing becomes what drives our life, absent to being, life is always a fight, it's always a struggle. And that desire to fill that sense of self-worth, it's an intrinsic longing because it's because of who we really are at our core. And when it is sought through an adopted identity, that's why we feel good about life when life is going good. When things are working our way, when people treat us the way we would like to be treated, when things are working out well, when we are able to achieve, when we live in the place we would want to live in, and we have the jobs we want to have, and we could wear the clothes we want to wear, and drive the vehicles, and own the homes, and our whole sense of worth is built on an external reality because we see things externally, because our whole sense of worth is built from an external structure. That's why healthcare, the World Health Organization, can define health as being covering all aspects of our being, yet still approach it as though it's an external solution. And we do the same in the way how we engage life, because that's how we've been conditioned. But that inner tension that happens right here in the soul, that is the definition of what they call stress. That is stress. Now, psychologists tell us, and the authorities in psychology tell us, that stress is really an internal turmoil that goes on inside of us. We know that, yet we still treat stress as though it's an external issue, just like what medicine is doing. In fact, stress is what we need to look at is we really need to get a handle on this, because everybody is saying how stressful life is becoming, how stressful, increasingly stressful, the world is becoming. And medicine is now telling us that stress is the number one driver of physical and mental dysfunction within the human being. And we're taught now to think about stress as being external. We're doing exactly what the healthcare system does, because our sense of who we are is based on an external reality. And so stress is all external. But look at what the statistics says, that 60 to 80% of people in modern societies live in a chronic or recurring state of stress. That comes from the World Health Organization and all major institutions across the globe. Up to 90% of doctor visits are stress related. Stress is the basic cause of 75 to 90% of all human illness and disease. Over 90% of disease is caused by stress, thoughts, and beliefs. Chronic stress increases the odds of developing Alzheimer's by 145%. No wonder mental illnesses are overtaken. And stress is an inner turmoil. It is just so interesting to me that when you look at the definition of what the authorities, those people who deal with this psychology and coaching and inner well-being, stress is an internal phenomenon. But we're casting it outside and we're saying stress is the job. Stress is the people on the job. Stress is the bills. Stress is the lack of finances. Stress is the traffic, and everything is outside. And we're looking in the wrong place, just like we are doing it with healthcare. And so what is the result? We have a chronic, escalating epidemic of lifestyle conditions. And so this identity crisis, which leads to this inner conflict, which is the root of stress, expresses itself as inauthentic living. Why is that important? Because the inauthentic living that we engage in, which we think nothing of because we don't engage life intentionally, not as we should, but we are also treating our bodies, which mirrors it. We don't treat our bodies intentionally either. And it shows up in our lives in some of these examples right here. It is that inner conflict. It is a fractured way between our inner and outer lives. It is privately experiencing life one way, but publicly pretending life is another. It is projecting self-confidence when we go out into public, but yet we are disturbed by what other people think about us. Inauthentic. It is judging others for improper behaviors, but justify our own. It is proclaiming to value truth, yet not be honest with ourselves or others. It's a very fractured way of living. The interesting thing is that our true inherent nature is that we are not fractured. We are actually whole. We are unbroken. This is just a conditioning that blocks us from recognizing who we really are and what we really possess. It is recognizing the value of health, yet willfully engaging in unhealthy habits. It is wanting inner peace, yet harboring thoughts of resentment, worry, envy, etc. It is when we think one way, feel one way, but yet we say and we do another. It is when our inner well-being is defined by outer circumstances, and we call that stress. But the stress is not external. The stress is internal. Stress does not arise from external circumstances of life, but from how we interpret and react to them, which is shaped by an internal framework of our mindsets. arising out of an unstable sense of self. So who we believe ourselves to be, that becomes the filter through which we will perceive and experience life when our inner sense of self is not correctly aligned. Every thought, emotion, word, and action flows from a distortion. This means stress will always be inevitable. And if stress is inevitable, then living will always unfold from an unstable state of persistent imbalances. It will lead to dysfunction. It will lead to disease. And the percentages are escalating. And we're spending billions and billions of dollars to find solutions. And the solution is right here. It's right within us. We possess it. And why and how do we tap it? We have to step back, re-examine who we are, and understand that we're not broken. We lack nothing. We already possess it. We're just not aware of it. And as we learn, and as we discover, and as we journey into it, we're going to begin to unlock it more and more and watch and see how our experience of life is going to change. But how does this really translate into illness? When we understand that, it's going to help us to get a better handle on it. It translates into illness because of the central nervous system is the bridge between our minds and our bodies. And our mind, which is navigating and processing all that's happening in the invisible and the visible realm, the central nervous system is our bridge. Without the central nervous system, we would be like zombies. We could be alive, but have no life, no experience. That's what gives experience and enrichment to our life, is our central nervous system. Now, the central nervous system, which is the brain and the entire network of nerves throughout our bodies, that extends into the autonomic nervous system, which controls all bodily functions. And that system has two branches, which are synonymous with our two natures, spiritual nature and our physical nature. We need them both. Our physical and spiritual nature is designed to function as one single whole, which is bridged by our soul. When the soul, or our minds, or our hearts, or our thoughts and emotions is not in sync, then it creates that fracture. But this is how it breaks down into illness. When there is stress, when we are living stressed, the sympathetic nervous system, which is the first of the two branches of the autonomic nervous system, that becomes dominant. That is, we call it the fight-flight response. This is where, when there is stress, anxiety, anger, frustration, fear, and these negative states of being, it dumps all type of chemicals, cortisols, adrenaline, neurotransmitters into our system that begins to send our whole body into a spiral. And it promotes the very seed bed in which all chronic disease grow and which it is fertilized. It's called oxidation and inflammation. None of these lifestyle diseases can develop in our bodies unless there is chronic oxidation and systemic inflammation. And that happens when the sympathetic system is always dominant and always in high gear. It is always revved up. It is always dominant. We need to have our sympathetic nervous system because it is what helps us in times of emergency, in times of a crisis. It kicks in and gets us to be able to respond quickly, and then it's supposed to settle right back down. But for us, because we live in chronic states of stress, it is always in overdrive. It's even in overdrive for many people, even when they're sleeping. But all chronic lifestyle disease comes out of this inflammation response that is driven by the sympathetic nervous system. That's the stress response. The second branch of the autonomic nervous system is called the parasympathetic nervous system, and this deals with healing and recovery. This happens when there is harmony and balance between the mind and the body. What flows from mind to body is harmonious. It's peace, it's coherence, it's balance. What flows from mind to body is homeostasis. Everything is in order. Everything is functioning orderly. The immune system is optimal. Nothing in the body heals and repairs properly without an optimal immune function. Cellular repair, genetic expressions, everything starts to work well when the qualities that's flowing from mind to body is free, coherent, and in harmony. The central nervous system is regulated by our state of mind. And our state of mind is measured by brainwave activity. This is how we're able to tell in neuroscience there are different levels of brain waves. So there are different levels of beta and alpha and theta and delta and gamma. We know those different brain wave states. They're all a reflection of the state of mind. And so what we do know is that when brain waves reflect in a harmony, which is defined by positive vibrations, love, peace, joy, gratitude, etc., the central nervous system shifts the autonomic into a parasympathetic dominance. When the flow from mind to body is governed by peace, joy, and those harmonious vibrations, the parasympathetic becomes dominant. What happens? The body starts to repair. This is what spontaneous healing, this is what happens in spontaneous healing. The body just simply repairs over time. It just brings everything back to its normal function. However, when brain waves reflect inner dissonance or disharmony, defined by negative vibrations, fear, worry, anxiety, unworthiness, suppressed traumas, etc., the central nervous system shifts the autonomic into sympathetic dominance. This is how it happens. Now, we need to have both are supposed to be in balance. The sympathetic kicks in when we need it, but generally our life's supposed to be dominant with parasympathetic balance, harmony between mind and body. So what would be the solution? How do we get there? Well, we have to be able to synchronize our brain waves to reset the central nervous system that will naturally restore homeostasis, that mind-body harmony where the flow of life that runs through our system is not hindered, it's not resisted, it can flow free. And so alignment is our medicine, learning to live by design, not by default. It is being able to come to a place where pure thoughts, uplifting emotions, positive words, and actions that are all aligned as one. This dissolves that inner tension, that inner conflict that we call stress. The brain waves become harmonious. It restores that natural mind-body harmony, and we get parasympathetic dominance. So it's about cultivating a state of being of inner harmony, which is consistent with our true essence of being. And so we have to start cultivating our spiritual well-being through the appropriate practices, our mental well-being. Awareness is our superpower. I want to say that again. Awareness is our superpower. What we are not aware of does not exist. Anything that we're not aware of, it doesn't exist for us. And what we possess, we are not aware of it. We have to begin to develop that. We have to develop heart-mind coherence. And these are all practices that we could all engage in that really brings us to a place of much better living. And the result is our body just naturally starts to bring itself back into its natural state. Physically, we have to engage in the right practices there. And socially, how we interact with people. Every dimension of it, this is what true health really is. Now, I understand that this is a tall order. I understand that this is discipline, this is commitment, this is an engagement of life, this is a renewing of the mind, a reordering of habits. And believe me, it's actually such a beautiful and wonderful journey to engage in once we understand and we do it from the right way. But what if there was a way that we could actually synchronize our brainwave activity to resemble a state of mind that was actually in harmony, and it brought harmony between mind and body? What if there was a way? Because through meditation, we can do that. But if we can live with a state of mind that is in the theta, delta, or at least the alpha state of mind, our body will be more will be more in a parasympathetic dominance if we can be fully awake and engaging in life with a theta frame of mind, a theta state of mind. But we don't know how to do that because we have not been taught how to live at that level. But what if there was a way that we could actually synchronize our brainwaves to resemble a state of mind that was more harmonious and balanced? What would happen? Well, the flow would become free and the body would just simply do what it has to do. That brings us to the second segment now, where this gentleman discovered what is the most profound discovery made in human wellness. And it introduces a brand new way of wellness that was inspired by hope, it's framed in compassion, and trusted for its safety and effectiveness. It does not involve any medicine, no ingredients, no substances, no equipment, no external frequency devices. It doesn't require any of that, which is why it's not only safe, because nothing enters your body, nothing is ingested, nothing is beamed into your body. And because it taps into the natural inherent flow of life that's within, because it taps into that and frees it up, it is perhaps one of the most profound and the most powerful discoveries in helping human wellness. And why it was inspired by hope and framed in compassion, because he set out on a journey that took 15 years of research, development, and lots of investment to come to this discovery, and just because he was looking for a solution to solve his mother's problem of multiple sclerosis. A woman who was supposed to have been gone already and is still alive today because of what he's discovered. I'm going to show a short video of what he has discovered. It is unlocking human potential through unrivaled technology, and it is the most profound discovery that has been made in human wellness. I want you to think about no medicine. No medicine. How could there not be the need for medicine? Well, there could be not a need for medicine, whereas the placebo effect and spontaneous healing has shown us if we know how to tap that, because it is already inherent into us. What if that could become more prominent? Not just by us engaging our lifestyle habits and making the appropriate adjustments and renewals in our life, but if we could help to harness and support that. I'm going to show this a 2-minute video where he demonstrates using EEGs, how we measure brain waves, of how what he has discovered works.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jay Dhaliwal. I'm the CEO and founder of Vox Life and the creator of Vox Life HPT. Today, I want to talk to you about our Harmony Neuro Patch. And what this product does is actually stimulates receptors on our skin, sending a neurosignal to our brain to help it reach homeostasis. This is the only product in the world that relies on the neurohaptic system that every single one of us has to optimize our neurology and optimize our health. Today, with the help of Dr. Mark DeBrincat, our VP of Clinical Strategy, we're going to be using an FDA-cleared 19-channel EEG headset, as well as FDA-cleared software to visualize, record, and show the impact that our technology has on our neurology and our brains to help it reach optimal performance. What we want to show today is how the Harmony Neuro Patch helps that dysregulated yellow, blue, and red colors in the brain maps transform into that healthy green homeostasis neurology that is the foundation of health and wellness. So what we're looking at right now is a neurological QEEG output of Mike's limbic system. The 19 channels are reading over 60,000 brainwaves a second and generating an output of neurofunction and brainwaves. What we want to see now is where that suboptimal red and yellow colors are. We want to see them turning as much as possible to a healthy green with the application of our HPT patch. So we've applied the patch now to Mike's arm, and within 10 seconds, you're seeing that predominant yellow and red become predominantly green. Just for clarification, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing in the world that has this output at this rate of speed without drugs, without chemicals, without electricity. That's the power of Vox HPT. So when we see a healthy green neurology, what we're looking at is a brain and a mind in homeostasis. It is operating in its optimal function. And this is so important. And this is why it's so important. So VoxLife HPT, as we demonstrated with our NeuroPatch, helps the central nervous system reach homeostasis in our neurology. And the reason this is so important for overall wellness and health is that neurology is the top of the pyramid of our physiological health and wellness paradigm. First is neurology at the very top, then there's chemistry, then there's biology, then there's physics and mechanics. Neurology will have an impact all the way through our entire physiology. Healthy neurology, healthy body, better wellness.
A simple patch that just has a pattern on it that stick to the skin, stimulates receptors in the skin, sends a signal to the brain that brings brain waves back into their harmony. Now, we know in neuroscience that the brain waves are a reflection of our state of mind. Our state of mind, our mind is what runs our entire body. Our brain is the hardware through which that processes it. The brain possesses neural codes and pathways that run every physiological function. And they all run efficiently or deficiently based on the harmony of those brain waves. When you saw in the demonstration, the red and yellow colors, those of you who may be familiar with, if you might be familiar with neuroscience, is that red and yellow is always indicative of an erratic or an incoherent function of the brain, which is where most of us are. And green is always synonymous with more coherent, balanced function, where the regions of the brain all come in to coherence and balance and harmony. It's a state that it is an almost impossibility for the average human to be able to have that type of coherence unless you're an experienced meditator. You've been meditating maybe in a monastery like a monk for many years. So the technology is based on Nobel Prize research that goes way back into the early 1930s, of which the Nobel Prize was given for in the 40s. And that discovery back then just showed that all atoms in the human body, every cell in the human body, transmits and receives electromagnetic vibrations. Every cell in the human body. And then on the right side, the two other gentlemen that received the Nobel Prize for discovering that the sensory neurons in the skin carry ionic channels they call piezo channels that converts vibration, texture, and temperature into bioelectrical signals that are now interpreted by the brain and the nervous system. And so how it works, the simplicity of it is almost like how a QR code would work, just to give a reference. If you look at this QR code, this is a QR code of my website. Doesn't look like that, but there are different patterns or arrangement of these patterns that you can have. And if you point a camera at it, the camera will convert that visual pattern into a digital signal. That's technology. Converts a visual pattern into a digital signal, and it unlocks the information that that pattern represents. In a very similar way, Superpatch has discovered through incredible neuroscience research and work that the channels on the skin, those specialized ionic receptors in the skin, that you can create a pattern that when they read the pattern, it transmits a signal to the brain. And what they have been able to discover that various patterns will send various signals to the brain. And knowing that every biological function has a neural code that governs it, if your immune system, for example, is not optimal, it's because the neural pathway that governs immune function, it's not well synchronized and it's not well balanced, because nothing happens in the body that does not first go out of balance in the brain, because the brain is the master control center for it all. So what they have discovered, for example, is that they have a pattern that will send a signal to the brain, bring the region, bring the network that deals with immune function into harmony and balance. And what the result is, the immune system is reset back to its optimal function just by bringing it back into balance. And so it's like how a tuning fork would work. Let's say, using the immune system as an example, there's a neural code, a neural pathway in the brain that governs immune function, and it's like out of tune. What puts it out of tune? Contrary signals. Contrary signals like what? Our thought patterns, our emotional responses, our suppressed traumas, etc. Also things that come from diet and so on. But the network for the immune function is out of tune. If you got two tuning forks and you hit at the same pitch and you hit one, the other one simultaneously will start to vibrate. And it kind of works like that. The pattern that they put on the patch sends the signal and it retunes the network for the immune function. The result is the immune system just begins, it resets it back to its optimal functioning. Now, the skin, the technology is already built in. The body has the receptors in the skin. It just reads a pattern. No ingredients, nothing, no frequencies. The skin just reads the pattern. It just sends a vibration that has the correct tuning for specific areas of the brain. And so after 15 years of research and development, vibrotactile technology, as it's called, has now become peer-reviewed and published science. It's now listed in some of the world's major medical journals, the International Journal of Research on Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, the International Journal of Family Medicine and Healthcare, and others. And so this is not some experimental thing. This is now bona fide research and application. And in fact, Superpatch is now being invited to some of the major global symposiums to introduce their technology, because no one has ever seen anything like it. Indeed, nothing else like it currently exists, where without introducing anything into the body and without using biochemistry, by simply tapping into it, I hope you can get it. We're tapping into what inherently exists already. We already possess it. It's just not functioning optimally because there's been a disruption. There's been a distortion. And it's coming from where? It's coming from how we are engaged in life. And all the patches are doing is sending a signal to retune it, to reset it so that the function is optimal. That is, you could not get more natural, more safe, cleaner, and more efficient, and more potent than your body's own system, which is designed to heal and repair itself, being engaged naturally. And so we are unlocking that potential through the power of touch. And so when the mind and body can come back into harmony through synchronizing brainwave activity, not only does the mind become more orderly, but biological systems become more coordinated. And that brings back the homeostasis that upregulates the body's ability to regenerate and repair itself. And so to date, Superpatch has discovered 14 different patterns, and there are more that they have in research and development that's coming that is absolutely mind-blowing. They have discovered 14 revolutionary technologies that when you apply it, they impact our lives very clean and very effective, almost immediate response. Things that will help our mobility, our range of motion, our stability and balance, pain, athletic performance, stress, immune system, sleep, mental clarity, energy, mood, focus, healthy skin, metabolism, healthy habit control, passion. These are what they have discovered to date. Patterns that will impact the neural networks that will optimize these areas: health, wellness, and performance. This is mind-body solutions that everybody needs. I have become so passionate about this from how I see how this is impacting people's lives. My life own personally, my wife's life personally. I mean, that this is something that I believe I join with the vision of Jay Dhaliwal, who created this, that he wants to build something generational that will transform the world. I would join in that because being in the healthcare system for so many years and seeing what's available, people need this. People need something that's drug free, something that is safe, something that doesn't have allergic reactions, something that has no contraindications. It doesn't matter what medication a person may be on, you have no contraindications. Even if you have a medical implant like a pacemaker, it has no contraindications. Completely safe, non-invasive. You have a little toddler, 3 years old, that have the flu, you could stick it on onto the toddler and see the recovery, that how it happens. Very effective, very clean, very natural. Tapping into the human design. This is absolutely incredible. And the thing is, when you combine them, when you learn how to synchronize and use them, the efficacy of how it helps to harness that mind-body balance. You're talking about levels of wellness that people find very difficult to tap into. This is beyond what your diet can do. By the way, it doesn't replace good healthy eating, good healthy habits. It does not replace nutrition. It just helps our body to come back into better mind body brain body alignment, optimizing our function so that everything that we are doing with our diet, with our nutrition, actually becomes more efficient and more effective in our bodies. So this, you're talking about being able to protect our bodies, being able to harness our systems to be more efficient. And so a brain in sync is a body in balance. And when the brain rhythms flow harmoniously, the body systems resonate in accord. Now imagine applying this with your journey of cultivating your inner well-being, something that we all really need to really look at, because it's not just about our bodies feeling, functioning better, and overcoming illness. This is about living at a level of life across the board, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, financially, our entire lives being impacted. So we should all engage that process, but this becomes a bridge to help us to harness that even far more efficiently. These are very simple to use, very effective. You just peel it off, you stick it on. They've been tested. They're medically grade materials. It's safe for your skin, and so on. And so I want to just, my invitation to everyone here is to consider Super Patch as a bridge to your wellness. And your wellness is a reflection of how we are living our lives. And how we are living our lives is a reflection of our wellness. They're inseparable. This is a bridge to harness that journey. And whatever maybe symptoms you might be dealing with, or even if you're not even dealing with any symptoms, but you just want to enhance your physiology to function at a more efficient and a higher level, my invitation to you is get aligned and unlock that potential within. There's never been a discovery of how you can tap in to your own inherent potential in a very safe and non-invasive way like this. This is wearable self-care that is tailored by your body's own intelligence. That's absolutely mind-blowing. It takes a while to wrap your mind around that. We have a Facebook page that has thousands of testimonies of people all over the world that are seeing life changes and transformative results just using super patches. How could you access it? It's very easy to access. We invite people to look at Super Patches Blue Ocean Business for Entrepreneurs. Not that you may be looking for a business, because whether you are or not, it's fine. But it will give you access to this technology at a way that's very affordable. So you can simply access 4 of these technologies for There's a membership fee to become a member, which is $40. And then you can get 4 of these technologies. Altogether, it's costing you just $175. Now, you will not find this type of technology, this type of impact for your health and wellness at such an accessible cost. I was actually quite shocked to see, being in the industry for so many years, how something like this actually such a low cost. To understand that, you have to understand what a blue ocean business is. A blue ocean business is a business unlike what currently exists anywhere. Now, to become a member where you can access the technologies at wholesale pricing, that's all it would cost, and you get to choose 4 of any of the technologies. What I have on the screen there is just the ones that work together very well to optimize that mind-body synergy. But it could be, you're flexible to choose any 4 packs. But once you do that, you also have the option to participate in this, a very unique, a globally scalable economic model for those who may be interested in looking at financial options. For those of you who may be interested in that, we're doing a session tomorrow evening at 6:30 where we're going to look at what this blue ocean business really is, what makes it unique, and why it makes things so accessible, affordable, and what it means in terms of what it offers for building financial security. Why is that important? Because our level of income is relative to the choices and the options that we have in our lives, and it has a direct impact on our physical health and well-being. Why? Because the entire global economy is being suppressed by what? Economic pressures. And the biggest economic pressure is what? Healthcare. And so it impacts our lives. We need to be able to access that. But whether you have an interest in that or not, I am inviting you to consider it, just to be able to access the technology and be able to start your journey of where you're going to turn the flow from outside in back to inside out. And so as you consider this and cultivating your state of being, of inner harmony, you can harness that natural flow that already exists. And this is not just your body, this is mind and body. People who wear and use this technology over time, they find that more clarity in their thinking. This is not just your body's functioning and feeling better. Decision making becomes more fluent. Stress response, more emotional resilience. People like your sense of well-being begins to up level. You begin to now deal with life more efficiently. And what does that mean? It means you can now access this whole journey of inside out living. It becomes more accessible. This is, in my years as an entrepreneur in business and in healthcare, I have never come across anything that offers the average person a better way to live healthier and a better way that they can actually change their lives on every level. And so I'm going to stop sharing here right now. And in the session tomorrow evening, we're going to have, that one is interactive, this one is not. In that one, you get to ask questions about anything we might have discussed tonight. You get to ask questions about what we will present tomorrow. Tomorrow is actually a shorter session. And you get to ask anything about the technology and how it works. And so if you have an interest in that, tomorrow evening, you can get the link. You could reach out to the partner that might have been introduced to you or invited you onto this session, or you could reach out to me and get the link for that. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time to be here. I really trust that you would have heard something that would move you, that will stir you to begin to look at your life in a more holistic way, to think of health beyond how your body feels and functions, to understand that health encompasses every dimension of our life, and that our life is meant to be lived exactly the way our body is designed, in harmony and in balance. And there's a way to do that, but it's from the inside out. And as we begin to consider and as we begin to look at that, Superpatch is a perfect bridge that takes us into that journey. So with that, folks, I want to say good night. And I want to thank you once again coming on and taking the time and being here with us. I hope to see you all tomorrow evening. And until then, and until the next time, thank you. God bless you. Have a wonderful week.